I've spent most of my life hiking through forests across the United States, and until this happened, I had never once experienced anything I couldn't explain. I always thought stories about cryptids and unexplained creatures were either exaggerations or outright fabrications, the kind of things people tell themselves after being scared in the dark. That confidence is what led me into the woods that night, during the dead of winter, when the roads were empty and the forest felt completely detached from the rest of the world. I was staying in a small rental cabin near a remote stretch of forest land that locals rarely visited, partly because it wasn't marked clearly on maps and partly because cell service disappeared almost immediately after entering the area. The snow had been falling steadily all evening, not aggressively, just enough to blanket everything in silence, muffling sound and making the world feel distant and unreal. Around midnight, I decided to take a short walk along a narrow trail behind the cabin. It wasn't a reckless decision. I had proper winter gear, a flashlight, and I had walked similar trails countless times before. The forest was beautiful in a quiet, haunting way, the kind of beauty that makes you feel small but calm at the same time. Tall pine trees stretched endlessly upward, their branches heavy with snow, and a low fog drifted slowly between the trunks, moving just enough to catch your attention without revealing where it came from. The only sound I could hear was the soft crunch of snow beneath my boots and my own breathing, slow and steady in the cold air. After about 10 minutes, something about the atmosphere began to change. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was subtle, like a gradual pressure building in my chest. I realized that the forest had gone completely silent. Even earlier, there had been faint ambient noise, distant wind, or the occasional snap of a branch under the weight of snow, but now there was nothing. No movement, no wind, no natural sound at all. The silence felt intentional, like the forest itself had paused. I stopped walking and stood still, listening, expecting some sound to return, but it didn't. Instead, I became acutely aware of how loud my own presence felt, every breath sounding unnatural in the stillness. I told myself I was overthinking it and continued walking, but that uneasy feeling stayed with me. The fog seemed thicker now, clinging closer to the ground, and my flashlight beam didn't travel as far as it should have. That's when I noticed something that made me slow down again. The trail ahead of me looked unchanged, but behind me, the path I had just walked felt harder to see, almost swallowed by darkness. It wasn't that it had disappeared, it was more like my eyes refused to focus on it, as if the forest didn't want me looking back. I turned fully around and stood there, staring, trying to reassure myself that nothing had changed. That was when I heard it. At first, it wasn't a sound I could clearly identify. It was distant and faint, almost blending into the silence itself. I stood still, holding my breath, and realized it was movement, slow, deliberate movement, coming from somewhere deep in the trees ahead of me. It wasn't the sound of an animal running or stumbling through snow. It was measured, controlled, as if whatever was moving didn't need to rush. The sound would start, then stop, then start again, like it was testing whether I was paying attention. I raised my flashlight and scanned the tree line, expecting to catch the reflection of animal eyes or at least see branches shifting. There was nothing. Just trees, fog, and darkness. But the feeling of being watched intensified, settling deep into my instincts in a way I had never felt before. This wasn't fear caused by imagination. It was the kind of fear that feels ancient, the kind your body reacts to before your mind can form a thought. My heart rate picked up, and I felt a strong urge to leave immediately, but something kept me rooted in place, like my brain hadn't fully accepted that I was in danger yet. Then the sound moved closer. It still wasn't loud, but it was unmistakably nearer now, close enough that I could tell it wasn't coming from the ground level. The movement sounded higher, almost elevated, like something was shifting its weight from above rather than walking. I slowly tilted the flashlight upward, scanning the higher branches of the trees, and that's when I noticed the snow falling differently in one spot, disturbed as if something large had recently moved through it. I couldn't see a shape, couldn't make out a body, but the absence of snow where it should have been told me something had been there. That was the moment panic finally set in. I took a step backward, and the movement stopped instantly. The silence returned, heavier than before. I stood there, frozen, realizing that whatever was out there had reacted to me, not randomly, but deliberately. It knew exactly where I was. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to turn around and run back to the cabin, but I didn't move right away. I was afraid that the moment I did, it would move too, and I didn't want to know how close it actually was. I never saw it clearly that night, not in part one at least, but I can say with absolute certainty that something was there, something that did not behave like any animal I've ever encountered. And as I finally began to back away, slowly and carefully, the feeling that followed me out of those woods was worse than fear. It was the realization that whatever had been watching me hadn't been surprised by my presence at all. It had been waiting. After stumbling back toward the faint glow of the trailhead, my mind was racing in a fog of disbelief and fear. I kept replaying the silence, the thick fog, and that feeling of being watched, like the woods themselves had eyes. I should have turned around right then and left the forest behind forever, but something stopped me. Some part of me needed to know if what I'd felt out there was real or if I was losing my grip on reality. The deeper I went, the heavier the air became, like a blanket laid over the earth that pressed against my lungs with each breath. My flashlight flickered in the darkness, somehow casting longer shadows than it should have, shapes that seemed to shift just beyond the edge of the beam. I passed a fallen log coated in frost, its surface cracked and broken as if something much larger than me had forced its way through just moments before, and my stomach twisted into knots at the thought of what might have made it. Then I heard the sound again, only this time it wasn't footsteps. It was a low, guttural growl, the kind of noise no ordinary animal makes, something deeper and more resonant, vibrating through the trees and into my bones. I froze, every muscle locked in place, as the sound rose and fell, almost like breathing. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure whatever was out there heard it, but I couldn't force myself to move. Seconds passed like hours, and then the growl came again, closer, distinct, like it was right behind the next tree. I forced my flashlight in that direction, my hands shaking so badly the beam wavered across the snowy ground, illuminating nothing but empty spaces and the eerie sway of snow-draped branches. Then I saw it. Just a movement, a flicker in the corner of my eye, but it was enough to make my heart slam against my ribs. I turned the light directly toward it, and for a split second, I thought I saw a silhouette, tall, broad-shouldered, unnatural in shape, before it vanished back into the blackness. I don't know what compelled me to follow it, whether it was some twisted curiosity or plain terror trying to understand what was happening, but I started moving again, slower this time, trying to keep my flashlight aimed at every possible hiding spot. That's when I heard something else, a sound that didn't belong in any forest. A low, rhythmic thumping, like something massive pacing just beyond my sight. The ground seemed to tremble with each beat, and the fog thickened as if responding to its presence. I felt a chill not caused by the cold. I could feel its gaze, focused and unblinking, even though I couldn't see what was doing the watching. My throat went dry, and a sudden, overwhelming urge to scream welled up inside me, but no sound came out. I was completely paralyzed by fear and adrenaline, standing alone in the middle of the woods at night, chased by something that wanted to remain unseen. Then the breathing started, slow, heavy, deliberate, just a few feet behind me. I could feel the warmth of it in the cold air, like something exhaling directly into my back even though nothing was there. My every instinct screamed to run, yet every fiber of my being was trapped in place. The air felt alive, electric, and in that deadly quiet, I sensed movement all around me. Something was circling, studying me. Then, finally, the flash of motion. A tall figure slipping between two trees, barely visible, not quite human, not quite animal, its outline broad and muscular with two long limbs and a gait that was wrong in ways I couldn't define. I remember thinking that it must be a trick of the light or a hallucination, because no living thing should move like that. But the moment passed, and in the blink of an eye, it was gone, just gone, like it melted back into the darkness as if it were never there at all. I ran then, stumbling, sliding, not caring which direction as long as it took me away from that spot. My breath came in ragged bursts, and the forest seemed to close in around me, as if the trees themselves were trying to swallow me whole. Every time I thought I had escaped, I heard those footsteps again, behind me, beside me, everywhere and nowhere. I reached the trailhead and flung myself toward my truck, fumbling with the keys in a panic, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I didn't stop until I was back on the main road, headlights cutting through the fog, heart pounding so hard I thought it would tear itself from my chest. That night was the last time I set foot in those woods, and to this day, I still wonder if what I saw was a cryptid, some unknown creature lurking deep within American forests, or if it was something else entirely, something darker. I know what I experienced was real to me, the breath on my back, the unearthly shape disappearing into the fog, the sense that I was being watched by something ancient and aware. And every time I hear about another sighting of a tall, hairy figure in the Pacific Northwest, or a wolf-like shape pacing in a Wisconsin forest, or eerie glowing shapes in the dark Appalachian trees, I can't shake the memory of that night. Because whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen. It just wanted me to know, some things aren't meant to be explained, only survived.